Only making $1,000 a month? That's like an allowance for a college kid. Even students working at diners probably make more than that.
Well,
A low-income daughter-in-law is such a disgrace to our family. Should I have you divorce my son right now? I mean, he could definitely find a better wife. You know, he graduated from an Ivy League college, and now his income is extremely high.
Looking at the pay stub, my mother-in-law June kept nagging and throwing shade nonstop. Actually, that was not even my pay stub. My name's Julie. I'm a 32-year-old nurse. I've been married to Brad for 5 years. We met in college through a club, started dating, and eventually got married. We first crossed paths at a party when he was a medical student and I was in nursing school. After 3 attempts to pass the entrance exam, Brad successfully got into an Ivy League medical school. However, he failed his final exams twice and has yet to pass the medical licensing examination. Therefore, he worked part-time while studying hard for the exam. On the other hand, I went straight from nursing school to working in the field, so I'm the primary breadwinner in our household. Brad isn't the kind of guy who dreams of showing off with luxury cars on social media, like boasting about a $50,000 Rolex or a $500,000 Rolls-Royce. He is the kind of person who is moved to tears by stories of people who have lost loved ones to illness, diligently monitors daily infection rates during outbreaks, and educates himself on the challenges within domestic healthcare system. Even though he wasn't a doctor yet, I respected him deeply as a person. He was genuinely committed to becoming a doctor who would be able to save lives, so I never once thought of abandoning him, even as he entered his 30s without income. To my surprise, he hadn't told his parents that he was not yet a doctor.
Well, my mom's always on my case.
never mind, it's your life. I support you, my dear. You need not care about your parents. You should do what you want because you only live once.
Brad had successfully kept that a secret because he worked as a night security guard at the hospital where I am employed. Technically, he had been working at a hospital, so no one suspected anything. He had the knowledge, and I supplied him with real-life hospital stories so that he could talk about that convincingly. When we met his parents once in a while, I would just say,
In fact, he is quite popular among patients.
I believe gentle lies can sometimes save people. After all, telling a patient,
You only have 3 months left. It's a countdown.
is far less uplifting than saying,
You're looking good today and ate well.
Humans thrive on hope. Unlike Brad, who's earnest and honest, June is sharp-tongued and demanding. She had that stereotypical mean streak, constantly picking on me. She looked down on me, wondering why a nurse would marry her son, a doctor. She kept boasting,
Oh my, there could have been so many better women, like a dermatologist. A beautiful female doctor.
Meanwhile, I sincerely supported Brad's efforts to become a doctor, but at that point, he was still just a high school graduate with extensive knowledge of medicine, working part-time. Still, he was always grateful and telling me,
Thank you always for everything.
and I'd simply say not to worry about it and supported him in silence. In fact, my own work kept me extremely busy. With both of our incomes combined, we were just scraping by, but it was what it was. I didn't mind that much since I genuinely wanted to make a difference, not for money, inspired by Florence Nightingale. I have been working in the ward of internal medicine, one of the hardest and most demanding fields in nursing. I've never even thought about chasing money. As long as we can live, eat, and stay healthy, that's enough. That's what life is all about, isn't it? Even though I was the one financially supporting Brad's life expenses and education fee, his mother told the neighbors,
My son is a doctor, and earns so much.
Honestly, serious doctors wouldn't want their income flaunted by their moms, but she didn't care. It was all about money to her. Brad just stayed quiet, holding it in. June had no clue that he was actually working as a security guard at the hospital. In her mind, she was imagining him strutting around in green scrubs, which couldn't be further from reality. Even if he was indeed confidently walking around in green scrubs, it was not still something to brag about. I got where she was coming from, but that kind of pride should be restrained. Brad was on the verge of finally becoming a doctor, and I worried about how all this pressure from his mom might affect his mental state, causing him to fail the board exam again. After sticking it out this long, ending up as a security guard for life would surely be a bitter pill for him to swallow. To be honest, his personality was well suited to the job he was striving for. His only weakness, if you could call it that, was his kindness. Therefore, when June said things like,
My son makes $500,000 a year,
which was just entirely made up, it just added unnecessary pressure on him. I had gently tried to address that before.
Well, it might interfere with his work, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't talk so much about it. For the sake of his patients, too.
I mean, when I think of it, if I were sick, would I want to be treated by doctors whose moms constantly bragged about them to everyone? However, she didn't care.
Shut up. You're just a nurse. You should consider yourself luckier than winning the $5 million lottery to have married a doctor. Money can't buy status, you little nursing school grod.
She spat.
You're right. Truly, thank you for allowing me to marry Brad. I respect him deeply, both as a doctor and as a person. So please, I'd ask that you leave us in peace.
Shut up. There's still time. I can make him divorce you and find someone better. Imagine how sad it'd be for your kids to have inferior blood.
At that point, it was no longer just harassment, but almost abuse of human rights. However, I stayed silent. Compared to the mission of saving lives or the sense of duty in my work, her insults seemed so trivial that I couldn't take them seriously. Still, life carried on like this, until one day, the inevitable happened. Brad's parents lived about a 30-minute drive from our place, so we didn't visit often. Due to my busy work schedule, we had never been particularly close, which was why the lie had held up that long. Perhaps out of boredom or sheer impatience, June decided to show up at our home unannounced.
What a cramped little house. Why should my brilliant son have to live in such a shabby place?
Well, that's...
Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the rows of medical books.
Well, of course, this is my son we're talking about,
she said, snapping photos on her phone. However, most of those books were exam prep guides for the medical board exams, and I was inwardly panicking. This year's editions were there, which made it obvious he was still a student. My own vitals felt in danger, but I scrambled to cover it up.
June, I'm afraid to tell you, but we've both been so busy with work that we haven't had time to move. Besides, considering the current situations,
I said, subtly trying to urge her to leave. Despite that, instead of leaving, she began snooping around the house.
What's this weird dishware? If he's a doctor, you should be buying more expensive and sophisticated ones.
Oh, well, it's from the dollar store.
What did you say? The dollar store? I'm throwing this out.
No, please.
Due to Brad's exam fees and study materials being so expensive, we've been cutting back on luxuries, including using simple and inexpensive plates that served their purpose. As long as they held food, they were fine. At that moment, passing the exams was what mattered most. Fortunately, Brad was out at his security job at the hospital during all of that. I was genuinely relieved he wasn't home, since I didn't want him to be hurt by any of this. I was determined to get June out of the house before he returned. However, her snooping didn't stop.
These student-like clothes should be thrown out. A doctor should be wearing high-end brands,
She declared, tossing out Brad's favorite outfits. Furthermore,
what is this junky watch? A doctor should wear a luxury watch.
she said, failing to appreciate the practicality of his smartwatch, and threw that away. Brad's possessions were being thrown out one after another. Each item had been bought with money he had painstakingly earned. Even though he likely wished he could be working in a hospital treating patients, he stood outside as a security guard, swallowing his pride for the sake of his dream. His sweat and tears were reflected in those belongings. Yet, there was no stopping June's rampage.
It's because he married a curse of poverty that he is living this poor life, despite being a doctor. Why doesn't he live in a luxury high-rise? It's baffling. Unbelievable, really. I was even thinking of taking him shopping and having him buy me a bag, but
Her words were vile. I had no choice but to point out that her expectations of Brad were fundamentally misplaced, even before addressing the fact that he was still a student. As a fellow medical professional, I couldn't overlook her gold-digger attitude toward the profession.
June, if I may. Brad isn't a man of extravagant tastes. This lifestyle suits us just fine for now.
I said gently. However, she refused to yield.
shut up. Do you know how hard it was for him to get into med school? We've been waiting to recover all the money spent on his education. But thanks to you, look at this disgrace. Don't mess with me.
She only grew more hysterical and continued to search the house. She rummaged through the kitchen, then moved on to the closets, throwing out anything inexpensive. She even started opening our plastic box where we stored utility bills and mail. That's when she found a pay stub. The amount printed was $1,000 and Brad's name was clearly written on it. Whether it was her poor eyesight or her inability to read it properly, she didn't notice his name. Instead, she shrieked,
$1,000. What is this, you? You nurse. That's my son's daily rate, isn't it? Even anesthesiologists earn $1,000 a day. And you, the wife of an internal medicine doctor, only make $1,000? Are you slacking off at work?
She raved.
That's why you're living this poor life. You're the parasite, aren't you? Barely working and seducing a doctor just because being a nurse sounds good. You're just working part-time for fun, aren't you? $1,000 is as good as nothing. You might as well quit.
That money was what Brad earned during breaks in his study schedule, enduring the humiliation of younger doctors walking past him without so much as a glance, biting his lip in frustration. It was a figure of purity and nobility, far removed from something that might as good as nothing. Yet, June's tirade wouldn't stop, and the worst finally happened.
This cursed daughter-in-law. Get divorced quickly.
At that moment, the sound of the front door slamming shut echoed through the house. Brad had returned from his part-time job. Seeing his clothes and watch cruelly stuffed into a trash bag, his expression froze. Silently, he began picking up each item, one by one, with great care. However, June wouldn't relent.
Brad, listen to me. Divorce this woman. Why would someone as highly educated, high-earning, and handsome as you choose such a shabby woman? It breaks my heart. On top of that, she only earns $1,000.
Brad remained silent. His lips were pressed into a tight line, and even I couldn't tell what he was thinking. To add insult to injury, June declared,
I'll fetch the divorce papers. Abandon this dusty abode and that woman who reeks of antiseptic. You're a doctor. Remarrying should come as second nature.
Finally, Brad stood up slowly and spoke.
Mom, I've been keeping this from you, but I'm not a doctor yet.
What did you say?
I'm sorry for hiding it, but I haven't passed the board exams yet. As for the $1,000,
Completely stunned, June turned to me, as if seeking rescue.
Wait, what's he talking about? That $1,000 pay stub is yours, isn't it?
At that point, there was no turning back.
No, it's not mine.
I admitted. Brad added,
it's my pay from my part-time job.
This can't be. You're lying, right?
I'm not lying, it's true. I'm not a doctor yet. I failed the board exam twice.
Whether from the shock of learning her son wasn't yet a doctor or sheer coincidence, June started behaving erratically. Amid the mess she had created, she slipped on a pile of scattered documents and fell flat on the floor.
Oh no, help me.
She slipped and fell hard onto the floor. Fortunately, she managed to brace herself with her arm, avoiding a head injury, but there was a loud crack from her dominant right arm. That was likely a fracture. Brad and I quickly administered first aid, ensuring she was stabilized, and promptly took her to the hospital. We made sure she was guided all the way to the orthopedics department. However, Brad told her,
Mom, I hate to tell you this, but please don't come to our house ever again. Also, I don't want you to think of me as your son anymore.
Shocked by everything that had happened, June sat trembling.
I knew you'd been bragging about me to everyone. I put up with it because I felt bad about lying too. But to have the money I've worked so hard to earn insulted like that? That's too much.
That's because I never imagined you weren't a doctor.
June stammered.
Whether I'm a doctor or not doesn't matter. Do you think I'm studying so I can hear you say, my son earns $1,000 a day? I'm an adult now, and I realize that the differences in our values cannot be reconciled. Let's cut ties.
Thus, Brad decided to sever ties with his mother for good. Her pride in bragging about her son had been her only joy in life, and she was utterly deflated. She became a recluse, unable to face the neighbors, and rarely leaves her house anymore. Later that year, Brad successfully passed his medical board exams. Though a bit older than most, he began his career as a new intern. Watching him work in his scrubs, exuding determination, was genuinely inspiring. He showed kindness by bringing coffee to the hospital security guards, never forgetting the struggles he had once endured. For us, life became peaceful and happy. If June had just waited a few more months, her long-held wish to see Brad in his scrubs would have been fulfilled. However, as they say, it was her own doing. It is a truly tragic story, though self-inflicted.